And we have a webinar today for about an hour and a half until 3:30 to talk about funding programs for water, and it's really water and wastewater systems in North Carolina. And we have speakers from different funding agencies. I'll be introducing them in a moment. Just for now, I just wanted to thank you for attending, and to get us started, we are recording this webinar, and hopefully if the recording comes out okay, we'll be posting this webinar on the same web page where you signed up. So you can take a look and you can share it with others on your staff or other folks that you work with. And the PowerPoint slides are already on that web page. I will, in a moment, as soon as the speakers start talking, I will post in the chat the link to where you can find the PowerPoint slides, as well as hopefully the recording in a few days. Just to go over logistics, I will ask everyone to please mute your phones and your computers for now, just to make sure that we don't have a lot of feedback. We've got a lot of folks who are attending right now. We've got over 120 people on this call. And if you have any questions at any moment, please submit those questions in the chat. That's probably the easiest way to submit your questions. And we will have time at the end of each of the presenters' presentation. They can answer questions that are specific to their program. And then if we have time towards the end, we can cover any other remaining questions that were not covered in the presentation, earlier in the presentation. If you prefer to ask your question verbally, you can raise your hand. You can use the Zoom function to raise your hand, which I think you have to either open up the participants list or open up the reactions list. It's one or the other. And there's a button that says raise hand. And by doing that, you will get my attention, and I will call on you to unmute your phone. So don't unmute your phone until I ask you by name to unmute yourself so you can ask your question. The presentation slides and webinar, again, it's on this link. I'll be posting this link in the chat as well, so that you could easily access it. And it's in the email that you received earlier today. My name is Shadi Eskaf. I'm with the Environmental Finance Center at the UNC School of Government. And hopefully you're familiar with the EFC, and if not, you're familiar with the school. The Environmental Finance Center is part of the school. We do the same things that the school does, but our focus is really on helping and focusing on the environmental finance aspects. So we help a lot of the local governments in North Carolina and outside North Carolina focus on how do you pay for, how do you finance, how do you maintain your environmental services and systems in a financially sustainable, fair, and effective ways. So it's a lot of discussion around water, wastewater, and stormwater, and other environmental services, but those are kind of our main areas. And we do a lot of direct advising, we do a lot of training, and we do a lot of research on behalf of local and state governments. So if anybody has any questions on water, wastewater, and stormwater finance issues in the states, feel free to reach out to the EFC, and we're connected with the School of Government faculty. So if there are any legal questions, we can try to connect you with folks who can answer those questions as well. Our center is part of a network of EFCs across the country. Ours represents, well, we're in the region 4 of EPA, which is the Southeast, but we have other environmental finance centers across the country. And together we're providing this, this training as part of the Smart Management for Small Water Systems program, which is a project that's the Environmental Finance Center Network is doing under cooperative agreement with US EPA, which is the reason why this webinar is completely free for everybody to attend, because EPA has covered those costs for you. And if you're a small water system that serves fewer than 10,000 people, not connections, but people, you can go to efcnetwork.org, and we have a lot of resources and a lot of trainings that we post on that website, in addition to the UNC Environmental Finance Center's website as well. So feel free to reach out to us either way. We're active in both websites. And this recording will also be posted on that website as well. I'll talk about the EFC network and some of the resources we have available, but just briefly, if you're a small water system and you're looking for in-depth advising on any financial rates and finance or asset management, feel free to reach out to us and we will work with you directly one-on-one at no cost to you. I'm going to very quickly now turn on or go into the main part of the webinar, but I want to quickly introduce our speakers. We have 4 speakers from 3 different agencies, and these are not the only agencies that provide water and wastewater funding or stormwater funding in the state. There are other programs as well, but we just can't fit everything into an hour and a half. It's hard enough getting just these 3 agencies to, in an hour and a half. But we have Dennis Delong, who's the community program specialist at USDA Rural Development. We have after that we'll hear from John Riskars, who's the chief of the SRF section chief of the Division of Water Infrastructure at North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, and Julie Kubera, who is the CDBG Infrastructure Unit Supervisor, also from DWI. And then we'll hear from Hillary Sherman, who's the EDA North Carolina representative, about the different loans and grants that these agencies provide for water and wastewater and stormwater, and in some cases other other local government services as well. There are other programs, and I'll try to touch on those afterwards if we have time as well. Again, anytime you've got questions, please submit them into the chat, and they will be queued up for each of the speakers at the end of each of their presentations. But for now, I want to say just a collective thank you to all of our speakers for putting your, scheduling some time to do this webinar for everybody in the state. And with that, let's get started with Dennis Delong.
Thanks, Shadi. We appreciate the opportunity to participate and to share our program, some of particulars about our program with the audience. And I do know that we have a wide variety of people and municipalities in the audience are participating, and some of those will not be eligible for our programs. And I just ask them to bear with me, and I will have several slides, but I'm going to try to move through them very quickly. Again, this presentation will be made available, and if anybody has any questions, please ask. Next. I'm going to talk about our water and environmental programs, and that involves our water, our sewer, our stormwater, and our solid waste. Next. And I know that several of you have probably seen this and heard this presentation before, but for those who haven't, or may have forgotten, or didn't pay any attention the first time, can't imagine why, but it's possible, I guess. But who's eligible? Just about anybody, to be honest, to some degree. If you're any public body, as far as a county, town, city, water and sewer districts, authorities, metropolitan sewage districts, sanitary districts. The key is the population of these, and I'm saying not the county, not the districts, but the municipality itself, like a town or a city, cannot be in excess of 10,000 for our main program. Now, if you're in a county, obviously you're over 10,000, that's fine. We just could not allow any of our money to go into a town or city that's over 10,000 in population. Next. We do recognize one federally recognized Indian tribe, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, is eligible. And you see the state recognized tribes are not. We get many questions. They keep telling us they're state recognized. We understand that. But for the federal funds to be used, you have to be a federally recognized Indian tribe. Now, what I suggest, and I think some have, is some of the statewide, they just have to set up a nonprofit. They couldn't go under their name specifically, but they could set up a nonprofit. We might be able to help them. Next. We can do not-for-profit associations. Like I said, they could set up a cooperative, a water or sewer corporation. We do fund several of those. And in the associations, we can fund homeowners associations. It's rare, but we do. The difficulty for a homeowner association is having the financial wherewithal and the management wherewithal, but several of the larger and several of them do, and they do operate their and maintain their water and stormwater and sewer system. So, you know, we can, we're allowed, they are an eligible applicant. Next. So what can we fund? Really just about anything related to drinking water, sanitary sewer, the stormwater, or the solid waste disposal facilities. Next. As far as water, again, there's just very little we cannot participate in. You know, whether it's a new water system, whether it's just line extensions, whether it's a brand new system. And surprisingly so, there are still some of the smaller municipalities do not have potable drinking water systems, and or that they were formed, you know, 70 years ago or 100 years ago or 300 years ago. We just dealt with one. Only partially, the town was only partially, never has served, or they've annexed an area and they have to provide services to it. We could do that. Or storage facilities. You know, tanks are, you know, above ground, elevated tanks, but we can fund dams, reservoirs, levees. We have done reservoirs before if that purpose is for that reservoirs to hold back drinking water. Now, we're not going to do a dam if it was primarily built by the Corps of Engineers for recreation or flood control and levees, but if for primary purposes, it was for your drinking water purposes, we could be involved in that. Next. Other things we can fund, you know, water supply wells, we do that, several meter systems, SCADA, emergency generators, purchase of existing systems, and that's happened where there was a failing, where it usually comes into play as a failing nonprofit, and it's been purchased or assumed by a, you know, the county or another water or sewer district. And we can fund a project just to purchase additional capacity where there's really no construction at all. Now, some of these, you know, for us to emergency generators or SCADA system by itself, you know, it's hard for us to fund something that's only 10, 15, 20, 30, 50,000, unless you're a very small entity. But as usually we're funding those as part of a larger project. Next. When it gets to sewer, it's basically the same type of thing. When it's a new sewer system, you're making extensions to the sewer system, you're making improvements, collection or treatment or purchasing capacity in you know, an adjoining treatment facility, or same thing, purchase an existing system or emergency generators. Next. And stormwater. A lot of people don't know we actually are funding a stormwater project today, obligating the funds. We have done some of those, whether it's new or rehabilitation, you know, retention basins, ponds, inlets, you know, their pump stations, channels, pipe, curbing, guttering, all that. Now we get calls that, you know, they want to know if we'll give them some money to grade the berms where they can't get to state. It hasn't come out and done it. They've had some flooding issues and debris. That's not something we will fund. It's like you see on the picture there, is these are the type of things, the infrastructure that are involved. Doesn't mean you couldn't, as a part of a clear channel or something, but we're not going to go in and really do what the state should be doing along the state highway. Next. Solid waste, you know, if you need a new landfill, we're the people to come to. It may take you 25 years to get through the environmental, but we can fund them. Purchase trash trucks. Really, it's not, we do everything we do is on a 40-year basis. It's not viable, even though we can do it, to purchase trash truck under our water and environmental program. We have a community facilities, and I'll mention it later, that would be better for that. But you know, the transfer stations, convenience centers, we can actually finance those. Next. So for what purpose? Again, just about anything related to any of one of those four types of utilities, whether it's to construct, relocate, and you can see there buildings, roads, bridges, fences, utilities, any other improvements that's necessary for you to operate and maintain that facility. Now, we're not going to relocate a public road that the state's going to relocate or shouldn't, but if you had a, you know, we had a project once where, you know, this, to get to where the water storage tank was, you know, you had to cross a stream. and there was no real other convenience. They had to build a small bridge. Well, we can participate in that if that was necessary to get to that site. There was no other, viable site and that type of thing. We have relocated, fences and some other utilities and buildings of that nature, but we're not going to do it just to benefit somebody unless it's absolutely necessary, for the operation of the project. Next. And your fees, all your reasonable fees, and I say reasonable because we do try to help maintain costs or control costs to some degree, but anything related to your engineering, your legal, environmental, CPA, fiscal advisor, administrative services, if you're acquiring land, your water rights, leases, permits, anything of that nature is necessary. If you need to build, you have to purchase a site for the new plan, or you need just land for additional land for land application system. And we can fund the connection. Now, we usually normally will only fund the main line going in front of a person's property, going through town or out through a rural area. However, if your median household income in the service area, or that's the inside the municipality or outside or in a rural area, determine if the median household income of that service area is below $36,355, we will fund to connect a homeowner from their house to the main line. The only thing you have to get there is obviously you're going to have to get, the applicant's going to have to, the owner's going to have to get an easement from each property owner. And the one thing behind that is, as we all know, there are those in your area, no matter what service area, how big or little your area, there's those who have the financial wherewithal and some who do not. And just maintaining their payment, their monthly payment and all their other bills, it can be costly to run it from your house to the main line. And we will pay, we can make that as part of the project. And if you're grant eligible, that would be grant eligible too. Next. Now I mentioned the statewide, the reason I threw the other figure out, that's 80 to 36,355 is 80% of our statewide. Right now, our statewide median household income for our programs only is $45,444. Now, if you're below this figure, you may, keyword may, qualify for grant assistance. If you're above this, we've done some, but their median household income was in the 60,000 range. Doesn't mean you don't qualify. You just do not qualify for grant assistance, but you would still qualify for our 40-year loan program and the interest rate at that time. Next. We have two levels of grant, and it doesn't mean that you'll receive exactly 75% or 45%. And we can go up. We're not a grant-only agency. People call us and say, oh, we need 100% grant. Well, if you need 100% grant, you need to go somewhere else. We're not your funder. Now, we can participate with the other funders. However, we do not go above 75%. And to qualify for the 75%, you have to be below the 80% or below the 36,355, and your project must be necessary to alleviate a health or sanitary issue. That could be, if you're in violation of your discharge permit, if you've reached that 80% rule on your treatment plan, or you will be, records and history shows that you're approaching that. It could be many things. If you've had a lot of the systems we're financing improvements to now were built, some of them over 100 years ago. Some of the infrastructure is still in the ground and being used. You have the galvanized lines that are undersized. If you was to put that line in the ground, it wouldn't meet state requirements. So, if it's to upgrade those lines, if it's to even to increase the size from 2 to 4 or 3 to 6, if that's what's appropriate for that day, and that could qualify. If you've had so many line breaks, we've had some people just keep putting, couplings and band-aids basically around their lines, or so they're if there's documented history of that could meet the the qualifying standard. So there's a lot of things that can meet the health or sanitary and qualify for the 75%. Now, 45%, if you exceed, if you're between, or if you just put it this way, if you are not above the statewide of 45.44, but you don't have a health or sanitary issue, you can't qualify. You're just making improvements, or you're increasing capacity because, if you want to plan for future growth. And we're allowed to plan, you're allowed a 20% factor normally as just a normal growth factor. So if the project you want to do is basically rehab, but at the same time you want to, the town or county, wherever that area is growing. Now you have to show the growth, and we have to be able to document that. And you want to increase your capacity. Some of them you need to increase it 50%. You can document that. But if you're just wanting to go under normal circumstances, we allow 20%. But you could get an exception to that rule. Now, I will say, just because it says 75 or 45 doesn't mean that's what you'll receive. You may receive if you're up to 75, you may only get 45. You may get 52. You may get 71. Same thing with 45%. Very few people receive the maximum. Some people come very, very close. I had somebody, we did fund somebody like 74.1%. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. Next, we have three interest rates: poverty, intermediate, and market. Obviously, the poverty right now is at 1.25. They change, subject to change every quarter. Usually, if they do change, they change no more than 0.25%. What we've seen lately is 0.1%. It's usually not dramatic, but again, you could qualify for up to 75% and receive the poverty rate for 40 years. The intermediate rate, if you do not have a health or sanitary and you're below that 100%, it says between, but you could even be below that. And the market, which if you're above the statewide non-metropolitan household income of 45,444, you would still get 40 years, but you get an interest rate 2 1/8 at this point in time. Next. All our loans are 40 years long. We get people say, well, we'd really only finance this for 20 or 30. Well, we're financing your whole system. When you come in and you want to build a tank and a well, but you already have, 23 miles of pipe, or you got 10 miles of pipe, but you have 2 other tanks and you have all the meters and, or pump station, where we're financing that in the whole system in a way. We're financing this. We're basing, though, our underwriting on your system. So we finance everything for 40 years. We can defer your principal payment up to 3 years if you meet certain conditions. Next. Our interest rates, like I said, you're fixed at the rate of either, well, I say fixed, but really, if we obligate today and we obligate your poverty rate at 1 1/8, or 2 1/8, whatever, 1 1/8. And 3 years later, the project has been constructed and we're ready to close it, and the rate went up, from 1 1/8 to 1 3/4, you're locked in at the 1 1/8. Now let's just say, we obligate it at 1 1/2, 3 years later, or 2 or 4, whatever it takes to construct it, and the interest rate goes down, you can get the benefit of the interest rate going down. So if it went from 2 1/2 to 2 1/4 or whatever, you get that benefit. We have no processing fees. There's no any kind of fees other than your engineering or legal fees. There's no prepayment penalties. Very few people keep their loans with us 40 years. We've had a few, but most people end up paying us off before then. There's no prepayment penalties. Next. We have no set dates for applications. We accept applications on a rolling basis. We fund them at the time they're ready for funding. We don't hold them. We do score them, but we have not got in the position probably for over 10 years where we had so many applications, we had to do them in a scoring order. We fund them as you're ready. throughout the year. Of course, we're federally funded. We're a federal program. We start October 1, and then we go through the end of September. And there's no dollar limit. We funded applications up to over 100 million before. Next. I want to say right before I go on to this, we do have what we call we have an electronic application called RD Apply. Some of you out there may have participated in it, but any new applicants now, it's an online application process, basically a question and answer. You fill in the blanks or upload some documents. It's really and we can track it. We can see it once you started that application. We can follow along with you and let you know if what you put in there is adequate and if you need what else you might need. So that's the nice thing about it. And it's paperless. There may be a few pieces of paper, but if you're a tree hugger, you have to like it compared to what it used to be. Now we have I know time is limited. We have a guarantee program. Now this can benefit those. Our normal program is, like I said, is up to a population of 10,000 in the municipality, in the corporate limits. Now, if you're, like I said, in the county, we can go anywhere in that county. We've got, one applicant, we've got over 68,000 users, but they do not serve any one town over 10,000. So we can go anywhere in the county as long as we're not going into Raleigh or Greenville or Lumberton, anywhere around those. Well, we have a guaranteed program that allows to go up to 50,000 in population. We've had it before, we've used it in the past, usually for the nonprofits, but anybody can qualify up to 50,000. And basically, you're negotiating your rates and terms with your lender. Whatever you negotiate with them, again, this is a good program for those over 10,000. Don't qualify for our normal. Now there's no grant above 10,000, but if you need $30 million or $40 million, and you can work it. I know there are some funders out there that will do 40 years on those. So if next, up to 50,000. I'm not going to go through there. There's a guaranteed fee. There's some other issues there, but next, what I want to hit on is, that's negotiated between you and your lender. All we're doing basically is guaranteeing. So if we do an 80% guarantee, what's happening is, say 5 years down the road, and I can't imagine any public body is going to fail, that the state treasurer's office allow that to happen, even though some are on the verge. They will guarantee 80% of the loss. So at that time, if the federal government still owed $3 million, then we're going to guarantee 80% of that $3 million. So the banks, their exposure is only 20%, and they can sell part of that off anyway. So there's no preliminary engineering. We do not have any involvement with the preliminary engineering report. Whether you have one or don't have one, that's up to you. The only thing you really have to meet is you have to meet the NEPA requirements for environmental. Other than that, we're sort of a hands-off approach to it. The next. Again, basically what the American Iron and Steel do not apply. Davis-Bacon doesn't apply to the guarantee program. So there's a lot of benefits to the guarantee program. The only thing that really, we don't care, if you want to build a Cadillac out there, under our regular program, you have to be just, modest in design and size and cost. But the guaranteed, you spend whatever you want. It's not up to dictate or even review that cost. The only requirement really is we basically all we're doing is reviewing the lender's underwriting. And then you have to follow NEPA, and that's it. Next. We have some grant programs, and I'm not going to go into this. If you're interested, I'm going to hit a couple basic called a search grant. And basically what it is the engineer, it's for the engineer to go out and prepare an engineering report, environmental study. We have feasibility studies. We really don't do too many of those under this because it has to be project specific. So, really it's to help the engineer get paid up, once he completes it and it's accepted, the preliminary engineering and or environmental. Now, here is limit is $30,000 or 100% of development costs. So if the engineer is going to charge 27,000, we can go up to the 27. We can't go above 30. But these are only for the very small. Under 2,500 in population and under that 80% rule, the 36,350, and you're not sitting there with a chunk of cash. But we probably fund 7 or 8 of these a year. It's a good program. It's really to help the engineer. If you do not have the money to pay for that 30,000 or 25 or whatever it is, once he completes that and we accept it, then we release the funds to let you pay him. Next. Same, we have a pre-development planning grant, basically for the same purposes. However, it's limited to 30 or 75% of development costs. So if the engineer is going to charge, say, $20,000, then we could go up to 15. You'd have to come up with the other 5. Or if the engineer was charging 40,000 for the PER and environmental or whatever, which one, we could go up to the 30. The mean household income is the same for this. However, you can go up to 10,000 in population for this one. The other one, the search grant's 2,500. Next. Now we have an emergency and imminent community water assistance grant program. I'm not going to go into, there are several slides on this, and the things I want to put out is that if you have had or will have a reduction or decrease in the quantity, a decline in the quantity or quality of your water, and based on an emergency. Now you can see there what it's drought, earthquake, flood, tornado, hurricane, could be disease outbreak, spills, hazardous waste. We've had those. We funded some of these. The disease outbreak, it could be the PFCs, your Gen X would qualify. We all know we have floods and hurricanes, disease, tornadoes, touchdown, drought. We have funded these. Now, if you're in an area where it's being declared, say on the coast, and a hurricane come through and they declared, 15 or 10 counties on the east, you have to show that FEMA is not going to cover your loss, or that your insurance will not cover the loss. Now, the problem is, I say it's a problem, it's not a problem, but it's a problem qualifying. If your insurance company is going to cover that loss or FEMA will, then we cannot get involved. But we have others, and we funded these, that they weren't required where they're located to have flood insurance. That's a non-issue. They're not going to cover it. So in FEMA, it was never, they may have had 10 inches of rain in, 3 or 4 hours, and it washed out the road, the water line. Okay, it's not a natural disaster. It's just a localized event. Well, that would qualify. Next. Again, you can go up to 10,000 for this in population, and up to the 45,000. You don't have to be under the 80%. Next. I'm not going to go into the definitions. Next, Shai. Next. Now, you see here that we have 2 levels, funding levels. One is $1 million grant, one's $150,000 grant. The $1 million, if it affected your water supply, if it was a well, an intake, your plan itself were impacted by that event, you could possibly qualify for $1 million of assistance. Now, if it's just to a water line got washed out, and we've had this, and it didn't connect to the well or the water source, then the maximum is $150,000, but that's still a $150,000 grant. At the same time, though, you cannot have all kinds of cash sitting there unused with nothing to do with it and say, oh, we need all this grant from the federal government. Now, we do some of these. We'd be happy to work with you and help with the definitions, or if you've had any kind of event, please let us know and we'll see if we can help you. Next. I'm not going into the various, you can read these if later. Time is of the essence. Again, we have the $1 million limit and $150,000. Really, the $1 million in your source. And I'll give a couple examples. If we had a one in the mountains that their water intake kept getting damaged every time it flooded. You know, they had a flood and had a damage like 3 times in 5 years, and they wanted to relocate it but to a different location. You could qualify for $1 million. Or if you decide, you know, we're tired of this, or our wells are contaminated, we're going to connect, we're going to run a line, connect to the next town and purchase water. Now, this is only for water. This program is only for water, not for any kind of sewer improvements or sewer problems. So, you know, up to $1 million. Next. So again, there's, you know, if it's just to replace or repair that line, if it was related to the source, maybe $1 million. If it's not, then up to $150,000. Next. Well, I got a guaranteed loan program stuck in there in the middle, but that's back to that. So next. I'm going to talk just a minute about our community facilities program. So the difference here is our water and environmental program, the population limit is 10,000, where in the CF community facilities is 20,000. Now you can see there's, again, they can do just about anything. You can look, you know, we built new hospitals, medical clinics, dental, nursing homes, assisted living, telemedicine type systems, you know, town halls, courthouses, airport hangars, street improvements, police cars, police stations, correctional jails, prisons, public works buildings. We can do those normally under the, or, you know, fire trucks, community centers, transitional housing, childcare, museums, libraries, schools, distance, you name it, charter schools, public schools. We have funded, and some of these are rather large. I mean, I know one project right now, their funding right now is a $70 million project. Next. Again, up to 20,000, the same, basically, you know, your public bodies qualify. Some nonprofits like your charter schools, hospitals, private colleges, universities, and again, the federally recognized Indian Tribe Eastern Band. Next. Again, it can be used for a lot of the same type of purposes. Now, you know, it really depends on the service area here, of where it's, what area it's going to be served. So as long as the rural population served is over 51%, then we can participate. I'm not a community facilities person. I have worked exclusively in the water and environmental for the last 30 years. I'm just throwing this out there because it's a good program and I know just enough to be dangerous. Next. Rates and terms, same thing. Now on theirs, if you're funding a police cruiser, you're not going to go 40 years. You know, it's probably 7 years. You know, if a larger ladder truck or something, it could be 20 years, 15 years. Typically, you know, a building or such is 30 years, but they could go 40 years. Their interest rates on that side are just a smidget higher than the WEP, but no prepayment penalties or such. Next. All right, these are the 3 people, and there's a 4th, and I just haven't added them. Garland Bennett is our program director for the community programs, which covers the community facilities and the water environmental. I'm on there, Julia Johnson's on there, and there's a Josh Carswell, who's located out of Shelby. But Josh is now basically concentrates on our community facilities, the CF program. So if you have any questions about anything that you saw or read or heard, you can contact, specifically if it's water and waste, you can contact myself or Julia Johnson. If you need any questions on the community facility side, call me and I'll get you in contact with the right person. Next. Next. I'm done, I guess. Now, I thought I had a slide that showed our area offices. We have around the state. We have 6 area offices. They're the primary, I guess I took it out, primary developer of our applications first. Usually you'll go through that area office, and then it comes to the state office, Julie and I, to review and assist and review all the underwriting and approvals. But contact any of us if you have any questions. Shadi, I appreciate the opportunity. And if anybody has any questions, I'm open.
Thank you, Dennis, for this presentation. There's definitely a lot of different funding programs that you all have. So, I would always recommend folks to contact the people you see on this here. If there's, just so much that you don't know which way to go, contact them first and they can walk you through this process. We had a couple of quick questions, Dennis, and I know that you have to leave before the end of time. So if you don't mind, just quick answers to these. One is, what's the ratio of awardees to applicants for the grant programs? How competitive are we talking?
It really, we don't have a set, like, well, if, we look at various factors. We look at what your existing water sewer rate is right now. We look what percentage of your mean service area mean household income is. We look at everything initially as a loan only. Whether you submit a $500,000 application or a $25 million application, we look as a loan only. Can you afford that as a loan only? Well, everybody says no. We know that. Everybody says no. But we look at that. We look, well, okay, what if we did a loan only? What would be that percentage, the rate? What we classify after developing, the PR, taking the project costs, your O&M, proposed O&M, any debts you have, existing debts, things of that nature, and then work backwards into it. And we do compare. We have what we call similar systems. We have to compare you to similar systems of the same size, mean household income. If you have your water sources of wells, or if it's purchasing, we have to compare them to what those similar systems are and try to keep you within reason of those other systems. Sometimes we can do that, sometimes we can't. Let's just say, though, an example, a quick example, that your rate is going to be $35 as a loan only, and the average similar systems is 32. So what we can do is try to put sufficient grant into it to bring you back from that 35 to the 32 to match the other surrounding you. Now, it's not everybody, we hear, well, they got this grant or they didn't get, well, everybody's different. So to sit here and say, well, you're going to get a 35%, a 50%, or 70%, we can't do that. We can tell you what you're eligible for up to from what we can see. But we have people that receive, you might be eligible for 45 and you may get 25. You may get 32. You may get 42. You may get 44. So.
Dennis, I appreciate that and didn't want to interrupt because I thought that was also really important information for everybody to hear. But I think the question was just more generally, we know that the grants are so competitive. Are a majority of the utilities that apply to you for grants, do a majority of them get a grant, or is it okay?
I'd say if you qualify, 95% of our applications or more receive some form of grant. And usually the ones who do not is they're over the mean household income, and honestly, their rates are really low. They're really low. I mean, if you come to us, you got a median household income of $40,000 and your rate's $23, the odds of you receiving grant are slim.
Great, thank you so much, Dennis.
Just because your rates now, if you had 40,000, or if you had, let's just take two examples. If somebody come to us for mean household income's 20,000 and their rate's already $40, and you have somebody else and their mean household income's double that, 40,000, their rate's only 25. So who are we going to put the most grant into? We're going to try to help the most needy, the one with the lower mean household incomes with the already existing higher rates. So it's all relative.
Thank you. And we had another question, but just in the interest of time, I think we need to move on to the next session. I would maybe follow up with Dennis, just connect you with Jesse Day in the chat. There's a question about HOAs and setting up a small wastewater system. I think that might be better if you talk to them directly.
Yeah, Shadi, if I just say if they want my number, my email is on there to shoot me an email or give me a call, I'd be happy to speak with them.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Dennis.
Thank you.
So next up, we have John Riskars, and followed by directly with Julie Kubetta. Both of them are with the Division of Water Infrastructure in the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. John, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's go for it.
Next slide, please. All right, so within the Division of Water Infrastructure, we have a number of different funding sources and programs, and the rules, requirements, restrictions are a little bit different. But so I'm just going to really give you kind of an overview of the different programs and some generalities. I really encourage you, prior to an application round, contacting our staff, contacting myself, asking questions in order just to get more familiar with some of the finer details of the projects in order for you guys to get the best applications as you can to us. So our programs fund water and wastewater projects. They're generally eligible to local government units, so counties, cities, towns, sanitary districts. There are some eligibility restrictions based on the different programs for population size, as an example. And there is some eligibility to water corporations, but I don't think we have anybody from a corporation as part of this training. But if you are and are interested in knowing if you're eligible or not, again, just contact me or somebody from our staff. We have a combination of loans, principal forgiveness that goes with those loans, and grant opportunities. And we have two peer grant programs, the Community Development Block Grant Infrastructure Program. That's what Julie's going to talk about after I'm done speaking. And then a new program called the Viable Utility Reserve, which we're really just developing. And I have one slide on that as well that I'll get into later. Next slide, please. So overview of our programs. One thing we really try to do is try to keep it as simple as we can for our applicants. So we've developed one project application for all of our programs, and then we'll consider that application to try to best match the funds we have available to that application, and to prioritize those projects as they come in. We do this all at the same time. There's typically two funding rounds. We have one coming up where application deadlines are April 30th. That's very soon. And then again in the fall, approximately September 30th. We have already done the training for our April 30th round. We did record that, and it is available on our website. So if you missed it and want to get the latest and greatest on the spring round, please take some time and look at those videos or contact staff, and we'll answer whatever questions you have. As part of the application, we ask that you indicate what are your grant requirements for the project as a percentage. And then if we're not able to provide that grant amount, we know to go to the next lowest priority project and award fundings to those in priority order. And we also ask that you indicate if you're willing to accept the federal conditions. And again, this helps us award the best funds that we can, that you're eligible for and are willing to accept. So again, if you're not willing to accept that federal conditions, we know not to award federal funds to that application. Next slide, please. I'm going to go over the different funding programs and kind of start with what we consider to be the best funds, and then go to the ones that maybe aren't considered the best. And it's based on what requirements come with those funding programs. So probably our most appealing program comes from our state reserve. We get an annual appropriation of $10 million for that. It's somewhat reliant on what the legislation does. If they have any special appropriations for earmarked projects, it oftentimes comes out of that $10 million. But generally, we have $10 million for water and wastewater project grants, and for asset inventory assessment grants, merger, regionalization, feasibility study grants, all grant money. It's really, that's why it's the best we have available. the grant money is available only as part of the fall funding round, so not until next September. We do have some state reserve loan money that is a revolving loans, and sometimes those are made available in the spring. We kind of see how much we have in the different accounts to see if we could fully fund some projects, and if so, we would do that in the spring round. But it's kind of hard to predict. Next slide, please. For our state reserve funds, there are some limitations on the amount of money available for construction type projects. Whether it's a loan or a grant, that would be awarded from the state reserve. It's a $3 million max per applicant. It might be a max per round per year, sorry, or every 3 years. And that depends on whether or not the loan receives a lower interest rate, a targeted interest rate, what we call it, or a grant. Grants are only available every 3 years. If you're awarded a loan in the state reserve program, it's the terms would be starting at 20 years at 1/2 of the market rate for a 20-year bond. And that rate, well, I'm not sure what it is today, but it was 1.1% as part of our last fall's funding round, so pretty low. The grant or principal forgiveness for the state reserve grant percentage eligibility are determined using our affordability criteria. It's a 4-step process, and I'll go into that in a slide kind of later, but it's just a tool. It's a really transparent tool that we make available to you so you can plug in your community's information, some information on the project that's being applied for to see what level of grant eligibility that project may receive. Next slide, please. Asset inventory and assessment grants. This is a kind of a carve out from our typical construction projects. It's a $150,000 max per applicant per system every 3 years. So you can get one for your wastewater utility and one for your drinking water utility within that 3-year period. These grants are limited to people with less than 10,000 residential connections. There are some exceptions if you're partnering with a larger community or a larger community with a smaller community. That work would need to be done on the smaller community to be eligible. There is a small match that's required for an AIA grant. Again, that's dependent on that affordability calculator that I mentioned previously. So the AIA, what it is it's money to assess your system, find what you've got, do a condition assessment, and ideally move into that risk assessment, cost estimates for upgrades, developing a capital improvement planning, develop a capital improvement plan and implement it. So I think it's a really valuable tool for communities to just get a better sense of what they got and what their priorities are for managing their utilities. So SWIA, the State Water Infrastructure Authority, that's the authority that we work with for approving the funding. Our staff make recommendations and review the applications, but it's SWIA that makes that funding decision. So they've awarded approximately 30 AIA grants per year over the last 4 years. I look back quick, we had 110 applications for AIAs as part of our last round and funded 31 or 32. So we're not able to fund all of them, but we do get to a good amount. Next slide, please. The Merger Regionalization Feasibility Grant is another study grant. So outside of the normal construction type projects, there's a $50,000 cap per applicant per system over a 3-year period for these grants. So again, you can get one each for drinking water and wastewater. And the idea of these study grants is to evaluate long-term viability and resiliency of the facility or the utility. It's meant to evaluate the feasibility of merging or regionalize. It's intended to evaluate, can you share a management structure or create other type of partnerships with your neighbors to best use the resources that you have to serve your separate utilities. And of course, it also evaluates your current situation. So you have a basis of comparison of, does it make sense to move towards regionalization or merging, or is it best to stay as you are and operate your system as its own utility for your community? The SWIA has funded all eligible applications for MRF since 2016. I don't have a number. I think we funded 10 in the last round. But again, if you can get an eligible application, pretty good chance it's going to get funded. Next slide, please. The Viable Utility Reserve is our newest program. It was created in legislation 2019. And it is intended to help with this process where in conjunction with SWIA and the local government commission, is a system to designate or identify troubled systems, identify what's called a distressed unit. These funds would be available for distressed units and helping them move towards viability or not being distressed. Most of them are viable. It's just giving them some tools to make sure that they have a long-term financial plan to support their utility. The Viable Utility Reserve was given a one-time appropriation of $9 million. We recognize that's not nearly enough to meet the needs of North Carolina communities for this program, but it's a good starting point. And we're really hopeful to get more funds appropriated. Hopefully we'll see the governor's budget in the next couple of days. That'll be a good sign. But are hopeful that there'll be more funds for this program. Viable Utility Reserve is eligible for water and wastewater construction projects, also planning and assessments type of work, including rate studies, which is a new eligible type of project for us. And also there is emergency operation grants available to systems where the local government commission has taken over. We do have emergency operation loans available through the state reserve. This would be a grant for emergency operation. And that's new for us as well. The Viable Utility Reserve funds may include grant conditions. And those grant conditions kind of will be designed to just assure that the system, the utility is moving through the Viable Utility Program, the distressed requirements that came with that statute. These funds must be approved by both SWIA and LGC, which is a little bit different for us. We're really still developing the priority system for the Viable Utility Reserve funds and just the application process and how it's all going to work. These funds are not open for open application for this spring for the April 30th deadline, but we do hope to have it be more open for everybody in the fall of 2021. Next slide, please. So moving on to our federal funded programs, these have some more requirements, so are not as appealing as our state funds. We have the state revolving fund, which we make about $120 to $130 million per year available for clean water or wastewater projects, and another $90 to $100 million for drinking water projects. These funds are awarded twice per year, in the spring and the fall. And our other federal funding program is the CDBGI program. And Julie will talk more about that later. Next slide. So the state revolving funds, they can fund all of our typical utility construction projects, but there also can be used for reclaimed water, stormwater BMPs, stream restoration, and energy efficiency types of projects. So if you're interested in those, again, check our website out, call our staff, and get some more details on how best to prepare an application if you're looking to do something that we don't see quite as often, the reclaimed water, stormwater, etc. Next slide, please. So just some general information on our SRF program. It's our biggest program. That's where we do most of our funding out of. And while most people are more interested in the grants, this is where, again, most of the projects come and where you likely have most of your questions. Again, it's 1/2 market rate interest rate, primarily are giving out loans. there are opportunities to get a reduced interest rate, either a 1% interest rate reduction or 0% interest rate loan. And that's based on that affordability calculator and affordability criteria that we use to determine your grant and principal forgiveness eligibility. There's also a 1% interest rate reduction for green projects. So that's your energy efficiency reductions types of work can get lower interest rates. I mentioned principal forgiveness. Principal forgiveness is grant-like money. A portion of the loan is forgiven. You don't have to pay it back. It's not a grant. You can't call it a grant. It's principal forgiveness, but it's a really good thing. We have some limitations. Projects that eliminate a failing system, whether it's wastewater or water, are eligible for 100% principal forgiveness up to $3 million. Our other types of projects that are eligible for principal forgiveness are capped at $500,000 per applicant per round. But again, there's also a percentage limitation based on the affordability criteria, and that comes in 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100%. The limitation for loans within the SRF, $20 million limit for drinking water projects, $30 million for clean water projects, and then the utility has a $100 million cap at any given time. With a federal program comes federal requirements. So Davis-Bacon wage rates, American Iron and Steel, and a NEPA-like process are required for any projects that receives SRF funds. Next slide, please. So I mentioned affordability criteria. There's 4 elements or 4 steps that we look at, or you can look at in evaluating whether or not you'd be eligible for grant or principal forgiveness. We start out with the size of the community. There's a threshold of 20,000 residential connections. You have to be less than that to get through the first step, if you are. And then we would look at 5 economic indicators or local government unit indicator data, where you would be compared to benchmark value. If your community is worse than 3 out of 5 for these economic indicators, you go to the next step, where we look at existing revenues. And there we're looking at a future operating ratio. So what would your operating ratio be with the project that you're applying for funds for? If that operating ratio is less than 1.3, you go to step 4. Step 4 is the exciting one. We call it the Affordability Matrix. And there you're looking at your current rates for your utility and the cost per connection for the project. If both of those exceed the state median, then you become, well, either one becomes is over the state median, you become eligible for 25% grant or principal forgiveness. And then there's ranges of rates and project cost that can move you into higher and higher grant or principal forgiveness percentages, all the way up to 100%. There's a really great tool that's on our website where all of your local government information is already in the database. You select your town or your community, put some project information in, and it'll tell you what your eligibility is before you even apply. So if you do that right, you kind of know what you might be able to get for that project. Next step, please. So what are some of the ongoing efforts and things for you to look out for that'll help you decide if our project's right for you, or maybe how you can help our project grow? Our intended use plan, which is a document we send to EPA every year, and it kind of outlines what we do and how we're going to administer the SRF funds. That will go to public notice hopefully in April, where you have an opportunity to comment on that and give us direction on how you think we could better implement that program. As part of that is our priority point system, and that's what we use to rank or score all the applications for funding. The higher your score, the more likely you are to be awarded funds. There's 3 different ones. There's one for construction projects, there's one for AIAs, and one for MRFs. And those all will go out with the IUP for public notice in April. We hope to. We have to take it to SWIA for approval before that happens. And finally, we are reviewing and updating the affordability calculations and steps, specifically the rate data that we use to calculate the median rate and median project costs. We're all based on 2015 and earlier data. So we're updating that to 2020. As you can imagine, the statewide rates have increased significantly. So you can look for a bump up in those rate ranges. It actually makes it a little bit more difficult for some of you to qualify for that principal forgiveness. So keep an eye out for that, and please provide public comment as part of that if you wish. And finally, the Viable Utility Program. It's something that we're developing as we go, and we're going to continue to look to make sure that our other funding programs are synchronized with the Viable Utility Program and vice versa, so that our funding is awarded as best it can to support all of you guys. I think that's my last slide. I don't know, Shadi, if you want to go right to Julie. I saw a bunch of questions pop up, but I haven't been able to read them.
I'd suggest let's go to Julie, and then depending on how much time is available, we are running over. So I'm asking both Julie and Hillary to try to keep their presentation short. But if there are questions and we don't have time to address them, we will follow up, make sure that we connect folks to the program administrators. But thank you so much, John. And we might be able to come back to the questions at the end as well. Julie, all yours.
Thanks, Shadi. I manage the Community Development Block Grant Infrastructure Funding Program in the Division of Water Infrastructure at DEQ. And I don't have a camera, so you're just gonna have to look at my slides. Next slide. Okay, the program, the Community Development Block Grant Program, is a comprehensive community development program that is overseen by HUD. And HUD, Housing and Urban Development, this is a different animal. It's unlike anything that you've seen from Dennis Delong or from John Riskars. This is a comprehensive program, and the goal is to improve the quality of life, public and environmental health, and economic vitality for low to moderate income communities by correcting water and wastewater infrastructure problems. We have a threshold criteria in that the area to be served must have a minimum of 51% low to moderate income population in the service area. And I'll talk about how you figure that out a little bit later. Next slide. We can only fund units of general local government. We cannot fund your sewer districts. We can't fund water districts, those single use or single purpose rather units of local government. We can only fund counties and municipalities. We cannot fund entitlement cities. So if you're from any of these cities, I'm sorry, we can't work with you because you get your money directly from HUD in Washington. You don't have to go through the state to get your community development money. Also, if you are in Wake, Mecklenburg, Union, and Cumberland counties, we can't work with you. Those are entitlement counties, and again, you get your money directly from HUD. So I'm sorry, but that leaves a lot of other people in the state to work with. Next slide. We can offer 100% grant. We can offer a maximum of $2 million over a period of 3 years. Our appropriation is between 21 to 25 million each year. It depends on what the congressional appropriation is to the state of North Carolina, and then what the legislature decides to portion to the water and sewer program here in DEQ. It is a very competitive program. We suggest you review past recommendations for award to determine if your project might be one we would recommend for funding. Also, if you're thinking about applying to our program, you'll have to determine the income levels in the community by either survey, and that's door to door, knock on each door and ask the questions, survey, or by using American Community Survey statistics. They're assembled by HUD, and you can use that to qualify your community. Next slide. We can fund both water and sewer work, much the same kinds of projects that John Riskars just talked to you about, we can do those kinds of projects too. But one thing that's different is we can fund new water or sewer extensions of service into low to moderate income areas and connect houses to service if those homes are inhabited by low to moderate income people. The work must be in residential areas. We cannot fund infrastructure in business districts. We also cannot fund infrastructure that leads to job creation. There is a CDBG program that can, and that program is in the Commerce Department. And of course, Hillary will tell you how she might be able to do that too. Next slide. Comprehensive community development is accomplished by compliance with several federal regulations. And so should you receive an award, you will be asked to prepare several different plans that will ready your community to deal with the future. And so that will include things like your equal employment opportunity plan, procurement plan, Section 3 plan, which mandates hiring low-income people into the project. And then the language access plan, which requires that you be prepared to respond to someone who speaks another language, and you'll determine what the predominant, quote, other language would be in your community. And then a residential anti-displacement relocation plan should people have to move out of their homes because of the work that you're doing in their community. Next slide. Grantees will also develop a citizen participation plan. That is, how are you going to have public hearings and get everyone involved in making decisions in the community? And at the heart of all HUD programs is a fair housing plan, and that will have to be prepared as well. You'll also develop and analyze your town or county facilities and look at how you can accommodate the physically handicapped individuals in your community to allow them to participate in decision making. You'll have to adopt an excessive force provision that basically states that excessive force will not be used in the in non-violent civil rights protests. And then a floodplain certification that states either your infrastructure is not in the floodplain or that it is insured. Next slide. You'll also have to comply with Davis-Bacon and the associated labor standards during construction. You'll have to do procurement according to federal standards, following a policy that we have developed for the state CDBG program, because the state CDBG program does not have to follow every line of the 2 Part 200 regulations. We're actually exempted from about 3 of the subparts. And also, you will probably hire a grant administrator to assist the town with the development and implementation of those plans and conduct worker interviews to demonstrate Davis-Bacon compliance. Even though you hire someone to do that work, ultimately, though, it is the local government who is responsible for compliance. And so keep that in mind when you're hiring a grant administrator. Make sure you're getting someone who knows how to do the job. Next slide. We will be having virtual training on how to apply for our fall round of grant making. And that how to apply training will occur on May 5th from 9 to 12. And we don't yet have a sign up on the website for the division yet, but we will very soon. And so please look for it. We'd love to have you participate in the how to apply class. We offer technical assistance at any time. You can give us a call, Zoom us, whatever you want to do. And we will actually review a draft application through August 31st, prior to the September 30th deadline for your grant being due. We can meet with you to help you scope projects and answer questions about the program. Well, maybe not now, but we can Zoom with you. Well, we can't really meet face-to-face, or shouldn't be meeting face-to-face quite yet. Next slide. Okay, last round, and that was our 2019 round. We received 27 applications. We funded 18 projects. These are the grantees. You may know some of the people who live in these communities, or you may be from these communities. Next slide. We We received 39 applications this current round. We are likely to be recommending 15 of those. And that's usually what the ratio is. About a third of what we get in the way of applications is what we wind up funding. And of course, it's all up to the State Water Infrastructure Authority. Here is our contact information. I am retiring on April 30th. So after April 30th, you need to talk to Colleen Simmons. So please, do that, and she'll be glad to talk to you also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie, and congratulations to you as well as to Dennis. He's also heading up too. He's retiring. So
yeah,
feel free to contact their colleagues, Colleen and Julia, for instance, at USDA. I just wanted to point out for those of you who haven't opened up their chat, but there were questions that were sent to John. John has responded to the questions in the chat as well. So if you scroll through, you can see the questions and answers. Thank you, John, for doing that. If you do have questions for Julie, please put them into the chat. And Julie, if you don't mind checking and responding to any questions that come in through the chat.
okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's move on and talk with Hillary Sherman, who's going to talk about the EDA funding. Hillary, you set?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to share information about EDA. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll go fairly quick on this because I do want to make sure we have a chance to have questions if possible. For those of you who have not worked with EDA previously, EDA is a small federal agency within the U.S. Department of Commerce. And our funding is allocated to the regional offices, meaning that North Carolina does not receive a set allocation of funding. We are a grant-based agency, and our grants are awarded on a competitive basis against the evaluation criteria in the applicable notice of funding opportunity for the region at hand. So basically, when North Carolina applicants are submitting applications and are competing, we are competing against 7 other states against a pool of available funding. I think it's important to note the EDA, while folks come to us for grant-based assistance, that is only one part of what we do. And we also really work very closely with a number of partners across the state who often serve as COGs or economic development districts to do multi-county regional planning. And we provide a lot of regional and economic data through a variety of sources. So I don't have a lot of data on that in this slideshow, but if you're interested in either of those things, we'd be happy to have an offline conversation with you on those. Go ahead, next slide. In terms of our funding, it basically kind of boils down to 2 buckets. We have a construction bucket and we have a technical assistance bucket. And the activities that we can fund through our construction bucket are much the same as has been shared. The difference is, who are we doing it for? So EDA, our statute, is really focused on supporting job creation or supporting job retention, providing the framework, the environment by which business can be competitive, in which communities can be able to be viable and prosperous in the long term. And so while you may look at an issue as an I&I issue or a lagoon liner issue or a system issue or the need for a tank, that's not going to resonate with us. Other funders may focus just on that. What we want to know is, why do you need that? Who is going to be serviced? So the most competitive projects for us are going to be those where an applicant is able to define that need in terms of how it's going to help existing companies be able to expand, existing companies be able to remain competitive in the area, and therefore be able to retain workforce, or where how it will help a new company be able to come in. These are federal dollars. And so when we're looking at the ability of a firm to come in, one of the things that's really important is we consider whether those jobs are going to be relocating from one part of the country to another. And if that's the case, those are generally not competitive. If it is a true expansion from one location, maybe they're going to be opening up a new facility. That's obviously a different story and is a competitive environment. Additionally, the other bucket is a non-construction bucket. And through this, EDA has funded a number of asset inventory and mapping projects, regional analysis, industry cluster analysis, that we can do soft work. on this. We do not generally do operations. That's generally not a competitive position. We can fund personnel for specific projects. So for example, if an applicant came in and said we need to fund a quarter of time of an FTE, generally the answer to that is going to be no. However, if the application is posed as we need to do an asset inventory to better understand our existing assets, to be able to help us move forward and work with our economic development commissioners and our local officials in terms of better meeting regional employers' needs and better being able to plan out what our future environment may look like. And to do that, we're going to use existing staff and we're going to pay, a certain percentage of the FTE for that. Then that could be a more competitive position. Go ahead, next slide, please. This is just a list of some of the things we can do. Again, it's a whole host of water and sewer related activities are allowable. And a number of non-construction related analysis or asset mapping are also relevant to many of you who are focused in that area. What's really important here is on the construction side, the asset has to be publicly owned. We'll talk more about that in a second. On the non-construction side, it's got to have a public utility. So if its analysis is only for a private sector or going to a private industry park without a clear public use, that's not going to be generally very competitive for us. Additionally, if it's just for residential use, that is not generally going to be a competitive position for EDA funding. Go ahead, next slide. And I'm going to go through these really quickly. So just examples here. This is in City of Shelby, we did water system improvements, and this was water system improvements specifically to facilitate job creation at Clearwater Paper Corporation. They came to us not for funding the water systems in itself. It was kind of couched and tied to that. Go ahead, next slide. Town on Mars Hill, this was an interesting one that came to us initially for the university expansion. And as we dug in, we found out that there was actually a really important manufacturer down the road who was also doing a expansion and needed that wastewater system to be improved and some lines to be added to make that viable. So this is where the conversations with the economic development representatives in your community can often be really critical in helping to get the layers of information that can make a project that initially may not seem competitive, more resonant with EDA. Go ahead, next slide. I'm going to kind of skip the rest of these fairly quickly. You can go ahead because these are just a number of examples, but in the interest of time, we're going to go through those. So in order to be eligible for EDA funding, you have to be an eligible applicant. These are going to be basically public entities. We can work with nonprofits that are working in collaboration with units of a local government, and that's generally going to be a 501c3. We generally do not work with 501c6s that are lobbying organizations. And while it's not specifically called out, water and sewer authorities or districts are definitely eligible applicants. Go ahead. You must be able to meet EDA's distress criteria in order to be eligible. And there's three primary ways. Folks generally look at the unemployment and per capita income. So if an unemployment rate for the most recent 2-year look back period is at least 1 point or higher than the national average, or a per capita income that's 80% or less than the national average for the region identified. And what's interesting about EDA is we do not identify what that region is. An applicant would define to us what that region is based on the specific project at hand. So whatever the region you define, so that's a census tract, is that a town, is that a county? This data is for that specific region. Or we can look at special need, and that can include things like presidentially declared disaster areas. And right now, all 100 counties are covered based on adverse impacts from COVID as a result of that presidential disaster declaration. We can also look at things like those that have had disaster declarations from Florence or Matthew or Tropical Storm Michael, or those that have had significant job losses. Depending on the population threshold, the job loss either has to be 200 or 500. And obviously the larger the jurisdiction, the higher that element is. Go ahead, next slide. EDA, like many other federal agencies, we do require matching share, and a number of the partners on this webinar are actually sources for the match. The big thing is it's got to be for the same scope. So if you're going to be applying to state funders or you're going to be applying to other partners for the match, the big thing is you want to make sure that you're asking the other partner that you're going to leverage the funding for the same scope. So if you go into them and ask for water line funding and then come to us for sewer, that's not going to line up. It needs to be inclusive of the entire project. Those of you who are entitlement communities, meaning that those on that list that Julie held up that get your funding directly from HUD for CDBG, CDBG funds from entitlement communities are not match eligible. Those of you who are non-entitlement funds who could access CDBG funds through DEQ or through Commerce can use those funds as match, provided that they are for the same scope, because they lose their federal character when they come through the state. Generally, the match rate is going to be 50%. But those communities that are applying under special need authority can request up to an 80% grant rate. What's really important to note here is that you can request up to an 80% grant rate. As Dennis was noted earlier, that is not a guarantee that just because you can ask for that will necessarily be given. There are a lot of factors that will be evaluated as part of that, one of which is going to be the availability of funding. EDA is a competitive grant agency, meaning that we always receive more applications than we have funds to give. And one of the things that we will look at is the applicant's ability to put funding into that, and that can become a competitive element to consider. Go ahead, next piece, please. All of our applications must be submitted online, and I'm really here to help you and happy to support, as Julie was saying, that her and her staff, can review applications, can provide technical assistance. I can do the same thing, and I'm more than happy to work with any community to do that. Go ahead, number 5. We do require a preliminary engineering report and an environmental narrative as part of the application. It is not a full phase environmental narrative. It is basically a response to, in a pre-defined template, specific environmental questions that will help EDA proceed forward with our NEPA reviews. This is federal money, and so we have to have that information in hand. We ask applicants not to proceed forward with doing SHPO or TIPO or Fish and Wildlife or other consults at the application stage. Based on the response of that environmental narrative, we will work with the applicant that is evaluated favorably during the initial reviews to get the applicable consults and make sure that we have everything we need to do that internal NEPA review and clearance. Go ahead, please. So what makes an applicant competitive? You can go ahead and click through these, or there should be 5 minutes. So basically there's a couple things that are going to make an applicant competitive. Obviously those that have a clear need, those where it's going to be on a publicly owned project, or that could include right away, or it could include assets that are going to be owned by a nonprofit, for example, a foundation for a community college is one that we've worked a lot with. Is the project an economic development project? So can you define the outcomes in terms of helping a community support job creation, or helping a community support job retention, or otherwise facilitating economic development in some way? How does the project support regional economic development goals as articulated in the CEDS, which is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy I highlighted very quickly before? And does a project align with at least one of the federal investment priorities? What's really important is I think these are like sprinkles on a cupcake. These make a good project better, but these do not make a project that does not meet minimum requirements eligible for funding. You see these listed here. I'm not going to go through them all specifically, but I always tell folks, if you hit more than one of these, even though the requirement is to hit just one of them, always make sure that I know that going into that, because it could help in when we're doing reviews, and it could be a more competitive positioning. And then obviously being able to meet the technical requirements. Next slide, I'm going to come with the last pieces, really thing. We do require federal procurement. We are going to put a lien on an asset or a covenant of use on that asset for 20 years. And it's going to say that the asset is going to be used basically for economic development purposes. And then all construction and equipment has to adhere to Buy American provisions and Davis-Bacon wage rates. And then obviously it's got to be submitted via grants.gov. So you're going to have a valid TIN, a DUNS, a SAM account. And then EDA, if you go to the next slide, EDA did receive funding under the recent American Recovery and Reinvestment, next slide, please, Act. And while we do not have specific agency-wide guidance on how those funds are yet to be allocated, there are some things you can be doing right now to help best position you for that forthcoming information. So one is, make sure you're talking to regional partners to really understand what are the existing economic development needs, how does that triangulate with what you see as water and sewer infrastructure needs. Who else in your community may be talking about putting in an application, being able to be clear up front about that, thinking about what your budget may be, what your matching source may be, and then consider impacts that your community may have had from COVID. Being able to tell that story is likely to be something that could be advantageous as you look at whether it's EDA or other funding sources for a variety of funding that's coming through. We will be publishing notice of funding opportunities. I'll be working very aggressively to get that information out. If you go to eda.gov, there is a pop-up that comes up that asks you to enter your email address. And if you do that, you will be one of the first folks, as soon as we publish that, we will notify everybody that those notice of funding opportunities have gone out. On the next slide is my name and my email, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. So please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Hillary, and thank you everybody for your patience. I'm sorry we did go a little bit over. I see one question that was unanswered so far, and it was about the scope and whether or not, if they're applying for a wastewater project, could they use the water and wastewater as the match, or does it have to be only the sewer?
So if the entire project is a water and sewer, you could come to EDA for water sewer. There can be it can be advantageous to make sure that this is scoped appropriately. So basically, if you include the whole thing, all the federal requirements are going to apply to the whole thing. So getting that scope right is really helpful in the long run. And I'll be happy to have conversations with anybody about that more. Please just email me and we'll talk more offline.
Thank you so much, Hillary, and thank you to Julie and I think John and Dennis. Also, thank you to them. They had to step out. I'm sorry that we don't have enough time for any more questions. I just will point out that again, we had presentations from 3 agencies, and there's so much to know. In addition to all those, there are other programs as well that fund water and wastewater and stormwater. And if you go to this web page, you'll be able to download. And this table is also linked on the same website that I've been posting on the chat. So you can go there and look under resources and download the spreadsheet that has all the different funding programs, including those that are not included. So there's funding available from the North Carolina Department of Commerce, Golden Leaf Foundation, EPA funds programs directly, Rural Water Association, SERCAP have funding, CoBank, a couple of other banking banks as well. So there's a lot of different programs that you could look for funding. So I would highly recommend taking a look at this document. It was last updated this time last year, so some things might have changed a little bit, but shouldn't be too far off. And there's also a separate document for disaster recovery. So if that's funding you're looking for disaster recovery specifically, take a look at that, this link as well. I'll skip over that. And again, if you have any questions, if they're a small water system and you're serving fewer than 10,000 people, please go to efcnetwork.org and click on assistance at the top. But if you're anybody else, larger utility or wastewater system, or just North Carolina local governments, we are, part of the School of Government. So just feel free to contact anybody at the EFC or send me an email and I can connect you with folks to answer your questions. Thank you so much for your time. Again, I apologize for going a little bit over, but to respect everybody's time, I'm going to close this out and record this webinar and post it hopefully on the website in the next few days as well. PowerPoint's already up there. So I would recommend that you all take a look and download these slides. It has all the links already hyperlinked there. Thank you so much. Thank you especially to the speakers for your time in putting these together, and hope everybody has a good day.